All right. Now, it's time for me to introduce you guys to Casey Hasten. Where is Casey Hasten? There she is. Hey, Casey. Casey's a longtime friend of mine, recruiter. She used to be an accountant, and she is with VIP. She's going to tell you a little bit about her company, what she does. And I also met Karen this morning. What? Karen's awesome. Karen supports you, doesn't she? Absolutely. And you support her more than she supports you, doesn't you? That's right. I'm going to leave you guys with Casey Hasten. A lot of you guys have seen the VIP podcast. Broadcast. Oh my God, where did I
broadcast?
Get that from?
That's kind of old.
I know. So I'm going to leave you guys with Casey. I'm going to get out of the way, see what she's got to say. Take it away, Casey.
Hello, everybody. How are you doing this morning? Good morning. Let me hear you, everybody. Please help me calm my nerves. Say good morning really loud. Oh, that was good. I'm not even going to have to ask.
Good morning. I got a bigger voice than I.
Hey, you're amplified, man. Let me set my stage up here for just a second. So I'm actually not going to talk about VIP very much today. Are y'all okay with that? Because I have something more important that I want to talk to you about. And I really want to motivate you by empowering you to be able to change your perception of reality. Does anybody know that's possible? You can actually change your perception of reality. And so that's what we're going to talk about today. So who are we really? Who are we really? Who am I? So my name is Casey Hasten. I'm the Director of Recruiting with VIP, a boutique accounting and finance recruiting firm. I am the CEO of Success North Dallas, a premier relationship building organization that was founded in 1988 by Bill Wallace. Who in here is familiar with Success North Dallas? So you know what I'm talking about, and you all know the great Bill Wallace. And so I was very honored when he decided after 34 years that he was going to retire, and he tapped me on the shoulder to be his successor and continue his legacy. I'm also, I tried to keep this short for you guys, I'm also a certified energy leadership coach through IPEC. IPEC stands for the Institute for Professional Excellence in Coaching. We are accredited by the International Coaching Federation. Is anybody familiar with that here? Which is the accrediting body for coaching schools. So think about it like your accrediting body for your higher learning, like your colleges and your universities. That's what ICF is. And I was very excited to learn after I started at ICF that we actually were ranked a few years ago independently as the #1 school in the US. So there was a bonus there. Exciting, right? I just tripped into that one. But the reason I'm sharing this with you is because through these agencies and through my continued daily inner work, I've learned some skills and strategies that help me to quiet the inner noise. Does anybody have an inner critic? Yeah, man, they can get loud. We got to quiet those suckers up. And also to calm the chaos. And so that's why I titled this Tend Your Inner Landscape, because I feel like that gives us a really good visual on what's going on inside of us. And until we get our inner world in control, it's going to be very difficult for us to control our outer world. So, and that's, if you take away anything from today, I do hope that it is that you are in control of your mindset. And it all begins with mindset. So, for those of you who didn't get a good look at my little friend here, I know you're probably wondering, why is a grown woman on stage with a doll? Yeah, she's Raggedy Ann. Actually, this is not Raggedy Ann, this is Telly. Telly's a really good friend of mine, and she wanted to be here with you today so she could kind of see what's going on and just offer you some encouragement as well. So do you mind if she shares the stage with me for a little bit? Is everybody okay with that? Give me a yes. Yes. Okay, I'm going to sit her right here, and she's going to keep an eye on all y'all, okay? All right, so before we get started, I want us to ground into the moment and center, okay? And so what that looks like, and there's a lot of science behind this, guys. This is not woo-woo, okay? There's a lot of science between connecting your heart, your head, and your head and your heart, okay? It's called coherency. There was a study done by Heart Math Institute, if any of y'all are familiar with them, that talks about how this helps us to center, okay? So we're going to close our eyes in just a minute, but I want to give you some instructions first, okay? We are going to do belly breaths. Does everybody know how to do belly breaths? Okay, so we're gonna breathe into our belly through our nose, and we're gonna hold our chest still, okay? We're gonna breathe into our belly, hold our chest still. Breathe in through our nose, and then we're gonna breathe out through our mouth. We're gonna do that for a count of 4, 3 times. For the 4th breath, this is gonna be the finale. We are gonna do a deep breath. We're gonna breathe in for 6. We're gonna hold for 4. I promise you won't pass out. And then we're gonna take one more sip of air, and then we're gonna let it all go with a sigh, and we're gonna release everything that does not serve us here today. Can we do that? Okay, so in through the nose, out through the mouth, into the belly, keep the chest still. Everybody got it? All right. So, everybody please close your eyes if it feels right to you. If it feels better, put your hand on your belly to make sure that you're breathing into your belly. Okay? And here we go. In through your nose, 2, 3, 4. Out through your mouth, 2, 3, 4. In through your nose, 2, 3, 4. Out through your mouth, 2, 3, 4. In through your nose, 2, 3, 4. Out through your mouth, 2, 3, 4. And now for the finale. Deep breath in, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Hold, 2, 3, 4. Take one more sip of that beautiful air around you and release with a sigh. Let everything go that doesn't serve you here today. And when you're ready, open your eyes to the world around you. And if it feels good, take a stretch. Everybody move your body just a little bit. Come on. We were sitting really still. Good job. Good job. I see somebody dancing back there. I like that. Okay, so the next thing we're going to do, and I want you to play along with me. Notice that you have a card in front of you on your table. And I want you to take this card, and here in a second, we're going to use it. And what I want you to do is I want you to set your intention for your time with us together today, okay? And it's really important that you write it down. But before you write down your intention, what I want you to do is I want you to put the date and Frisco Connect at the top. And then I want you to write your intention down. And it's whatever you want it to be. What do you want to accomplish today? Do you want to shift your mindset by the end of this meeting? Do you want to feel more confident? Whatever it is you desire, don't be shy, because this is for you and you alone. Now, if anybody pulled out your phone, put it up. I need you to put pen to paper on this, and there's a reason why, so we're going to get into a little bit of the science on this. Whenever you write stuff down, there's a process that happens in your brain called double encoding. Has anybody heard of this? Double encoding? I'm impressed. This is not a very well-known fact. So my understanding of double encoding is that when you write something down, you see it as you're writing it down, right? And it stores it in one part of your brain. When you look at what you wrote down, it stores it in a separate part of your brain. And we're going to talk about how important it is to streamline your focus. But what happens when you set an intention and set a focus, even if you're not thinking about that, your subconscious is. It's like you have an executive assistant in your head. And she's checking your emails, and she's checking to see where you need to be, and she's bringing up this information that's important to you, right? And that's what happens when we set an intention or when we focus. Our mind starts looking for ways to help us solve that intention. And so that's why I wanted us to write that down today. I actually you're going to learn something about me. Most of my conversations begin with, I just read a book, or I listened to a podcast. And then every now and then I took an assessment, because I'm an assessment junkie. I love them. So anyway, I went to an event last Friday, First Friday Book Synopsis, founded by Randy Mayu about 26 years ago, which is a great group to go to if you love to read but find yourself too time-starved to do so, because he covers 2 business books a month. And he does it 30 minutes each book, and I promise you, it's like Cliff Notes on steroids. You feel like you've read the book afterwards. But why I'm bringing this up is because he did a presentation on a book last Friday called Building a Second Brain. And it really reminded me about why it's important to write stuff down. But he added another level to it, which is why I had you date and add the place to your cards today. And don't lose those cards, because we're going to use them again later. Is because it creates an anchor. So when you store this piece of paper, and I do hope you'll keep it, and you find it 3 to 4 months later, you're going to have an anchor, because now you know the date and the place you were when you wrote this down. And it creates an anchor. All right, so let's talk about this. And I know that's probably really hard to see now that I'm looking at it. So I'll try to talk you through this, but again, before I start on this chart, which is very busy, I want to introduce you to another book. Who in here has read the book Power versus Force? You were like my new best friend. We need to talk. You like know all this stuff. So Power versus Force was written by Dr. David Hawkins. This was based on his research regarding consciousness as it relates to emotion, as it relates to energy or frequency, okay? This is not woo-woo. We actually emit energy everywhere we go. Think about it. Have you ever walked into a room and you come in contact with somebody and you're like, ooh, yeah? That's because of the energy they're emitting, okay? This is real. There's tons of studies on it. Well, Dr. Hawkins did this one study, and what he found was that our energy levels, which relates to our emotions, can be measured on a scale from 0 to 1,000, okay? And he also described two different types of energies, and I'll get into that in just a second. But on these two energy levels, and what he did, and he also measured, like, not only individually, but he measured society as a whole and gave it an energy ranking, and it's like barely surviving. And this was pre-COVID when he wrote this book. But he did it on a scale from 0 to 1,000. And the reason I wanted to bring his book up is because as I go through this chart, this is a completely separate study from his, which he did his study over almost 30 years to come up with his scale. They correlate almost exactly. Two completely independent studies. And there are other studies out there. These are the two I choose to focus on. He does a scale from 1 to 1,000. We do a scale from 1 to 7. But here's the difference. So like as he's stepping up through the earlier stages, he does like 50 and 75 and 100 because he feels like at the lower frequencies, when you make a shift, it's more impactful. As the higher the frequency, the less impact it has, and so those ranges get bigger. And when he gets to level 700, he does a block of 700 to 1,000. So I feel very confident in saying that these two studies correlate because his 700 to 1,000 is basically our level 7. Okay, so having explained that, we're going to focus on this chart. So levels 1 through 7, okay? Before we go there, I want to talk to you about the two different types of energy that exist. Catabolic and anabolic energy. And so let's start with catabolic energy. Catabolic energy is I'm not sure if my hair is getting in the way or if I keep turning away, but I like to be animated. So catabolic energy is described as life-consuming. It is not sustainable. This is often associated with stress, and we know that people that are in continued stress typically have health issues, right? Or they have mental issues. It's not sustainable. This is also associated with your fight or flight mode. I know all of y'all are familiar with that. Or not only just your fight or flight, but you tend to produce cortisol and adrenaline. And it's okay to produce those in limited quantities, but we were not intended to stay there for extended periods of time. So it's described as a destructive energy. Anabolic energy, on the other hand, is constructive. It is life enhancing, okay? This energy, when we are feeling this in our body, we are emitting endorphins that will optimize our systems, that will help us to complete the tasks and the projects in front of us. So, very quickly, I like to be very interactive, okay? And so I'd like to do a little experiment. Everybody cool with that? Sure. You say that now, wait till I tell you what it is. Okay, what we're gonna do is I want you to find a partner, and I want you to pick a topic that you're passionate about, okay? And then for 2 minutes, you're gonna talk to each other about this topic that you're passionate about. Super easy, right? Come on, is it your kids? Is it something, is it bowling night? Whatever it is, whatever you're passionate about. You're gonna talk to each other for 1 minute each, and I'll tell you when to switch. Simple enough? All right, let me get my timer. This is why I had to bring the phone, not for any other. All right, I'm gonna ask you just a second if everybody has. All right, does everybody have a partner? Everybody know who's going first? Pay attention, I'll tell you when to switch. You have 1 minute each. He's coming. Thanks, Alex. And switch. Make sure you switch partners so everybody gets a chance to talk. All right, everybody come back to me. Everybody, shh. Thank you. Okay, that was part one. Everybody keep with your same partners. Okay, so here's part two. You're not gonna like this. Okay. So what I want you to do is I want you to talk about your same topic, same partner. I'm only gonna ask you to do this for 30 seconds each this time. You'll see why. But this time, I want you to take these two fingers and I want you to jab them in your ribs. Only while you're talking, only for 30 seconds. This is to prove a point, okay? So make yourself uncomfortable, all right? I'm only gonna ask you to do it for 30 seconds each. You only have to have your fingers in your ribs when you're the one speaking, and go. Make it uncomfortable. And switch. Oops. I know 30 seconds seems like a long time with fingers in your ribs, right? Okay, you can take your fingers out of your ribs if you are the unlucky second person. Come back to me. Shh. Now, how did that feel?
She said she had to cut her nails.
It's distracting, right? When you have two fingers in your ribs, right? So I wanted to do that because I wanted you to see that that is a physical representation of what catabolic energy looks like. So imagine you walk into an interview and you have two fingers in your ribs. Okay? What kind of energy are you emitting? So if you walk into an interview with catabolic energy, whether that's from depression, anger because you haven't found a job yet, desperation because you really need a job, your interviewer is going to feel that. It is measured. Remember that, ooh, right? And this is the field of measurement, according to Heart Math Institute. And we emit the greatest field from our heart. So if you walk in with that energy, that catabolic energy, your hiring manager is going to start making decisions about whether or not to hire you based on that energy and won't even know why, no matter what you're saying. Energy is real. These frequencies that we emit from our body, I mean, hello, we have EKGs, right? So this is very real. So I would encourage you to make sure you take the fingers out of your ribs when you go into interviews so that you show up as anabolic as possible. And I'm going to give you another little trick. I love brain hacks, okay? Did you know that if you laugh for real or you laugh for fake, your brain doesn't know the difference? True story. This is a very true story. If you fake laugh, you release the same endorphins as if you laugh for real. Same thing if you smile. Whenever I'm counseling or coaching candidates that are about to go for a phone interview, I'm always like, smile. They're like, but they can't see me. And I'm like, they can feel you. You need to smile while you're on the phone. And I'll even go one step further. If you really want to start your day out right, smile in the mirror in the morning and then high five yourself. You think it's funny? Science behind it. Mel Robbins just wrote a book called The High Five Habit. Has anybody read that? Who's a fan? You are my friend. You are my person. It's a great book, and she talks about the science behind the high five habit. And when you look in the mirror and you smile and you say, good job, you don't need anybody else to encourage you because you're encouraging yourself. I challenge each of you to try that for 7 days and see how it works for you. Okay? Email me and let me know. All right, so back to the chart. So this is what we call our energetic self-perception chart. And this is just to kind of give you a map to know where you're at any given time, right? And we'll go through this very quickly. So the inner circle, the whole circle is self. But the inner circle is when you're consumed with self, okay? As we move to the middle circle, this is more outer, like more collective whole, like we're kind of starting to play like a team now and we care about others. And then the outer level is pure transcendence. This is where we reach that understanding of why we're here, which we probably never truly reach, which is, we'll talk about level 7 here in a minute. So let's start with level 1. This is described as the victim level. Levels 1 and 2 are both very catabolic, okay? Level 1 being the most catabolic. At this level, things are happening to you, not for you. And you just want to go crawl in a hole because you have no faith, right? And that takes away from your energy. At this level, our common thought is, I lose, and I hate myself. Seems like a pretty miserable place to choose to be in, right? So as we move up to level 2, this level is categorized by anger. And yes, it does have a higher frequency than victim, believe it or not. But that's because at this level, we've decided we're going to fight for ourselves, right? But still catabolic, still very catabolic. We're still very defiant. We're still very much into ourself. And so a common thought at this level is, I win, you lose, and I hate you. Okay? Level 3 is what we call our Band-Aid level. Also the gear shift level, because at this level we're moving into more anabolic energy, more anabolic frequency, so that we can start optimizing those systems. However, we still are getting drugged down by that catabolic energy. So let me give you an example, because even though that says level 3, it's not just level 3, it's 3.1, 3.2, 3.8, 3.9. So I'm going to give you a couple of examples. So let's say that I say, it's fine. Everything's going to be okay. Sounds a little bit more catabolic still, right? Yeah, probably a 3.1, 3.2. But I'm trying. I want to have faith that I can get to those anabolics, right? Maybe I need to have a good fake laugh. However, if I say, it's fine, everything's going to be okay. So now I'm starting to look outward. I'm a little bit more anabolic, probably less catabolic, and I'm moving into those higher levels, which is where we want to be. At this level, our common thought is, I win, but I'm excited about it now, right? Do you see the difference? Not I win, it's I win. And if you win too, great. So still focusing on me, right? Not focusing on the outer world. Level 4 is a really interesting level. And I'd like to say this is probably where I tend to stay most of the time, is in level 4. And this is the level of service. Now we are fully anabolic, and we are probably leaning towards servant leadership and probably leaning to more for the collective whole. Okay? We're serving the collective whole, not just ourselves anymore. We're moving more into stronger ego. And by that I mean that we believe in ourselves a little bit more. We're moving into outer faith and less judgment and more aware, more self-aware, okay? So level 4 is a level of service. And the reason I say it's a tricky level is because at any given time, it may get to be where it's too much because your heart is so big and you want to serve so much. And I can give you a perfect example. When I stepped up as CEO of Success North Dallas, I was suddenly invited to so many events, so many people wanted me to endorse what they were doing and to promote and to fundraise and do all that. And it got to the point where I was at events almost every night and almost every weekend. I was exhausted. Has anybody been here? I bet we got some servant leaders in the room, right? And I started going, oh my God, what am I gonna do? My friend Karen knows this. I call and whine to her all the time. And I just get so tired and I was so exhausted. And then I got a little mad because I was like, would y'all quit asking me to do things? You know I'm busy, you know? And I hate that. I hate it when people say they're busy. So anyway, I remembered my training. And at this level, it's very, very important to set boundaries, okay? You must set boundaries. I'm just going to do a quick time check. Looks like I'm going to go over. So anyway, so you have to set boundaries at this level. And I'm going to kind of go through the last ones very quickly because I want to get to the rest of this stuff. And boundaries may look like, I'm only going to do this number of events. After that, it's a no. And you need to have a hard no. Let your yes be yes and your no be no, right? At this level, it's you win and I love you. Looking outward, okay? Level 5, this is where we truly start to feel that inner peace, that inner knowledge, that self-awareness. Now we are starting to recognize our inner landscape. And now we want to tidy it up, okay? Level 5 is characterized by, we both win, and I understand you. Level 6 is what I call the flow state. This is where you truly get into what it is you're working on. Has anybody ever heard of Kairos time? Yeah. Who said yes? It's interesting, isn't it? It's like time stretches. So I feel like when I get into a level 6 energy, like I can get so much done. And I feel like in such a short amount of time. And so I play around and I say, I'm like Kairos time whenever I need to get a lot done and I don't have a lot of time. It's kind of like my superpower. But that's what the flow state is. And at this state, everybody always wins. And I am you. We are now a collective whole, okay? Level 7 is what I call the Buddha level, okay? We can't live here forever. We can't live here for very long. Unless you're a Buddha sitting on a mountaintop contemplating life. That's when you can live there all the time. But we do get to touch this level, okay? Now, how do we touch this level? Through prayer, through meditation, through quiet times, and also through just connecting to the breath. There is so much to be said about just connecting to the breath and grounding into the moment. My goal each day is to live in the present moment all the time. Don't worry about the future, don't worry about the past. Live in the present moment. It doesn't mean that we don't plan for it, but I don't worry about it. Okay? So, having gone through this chart, what I'd like for you to do, I need you to get your card back out, and I want you to reflect, honestly, where you feel like you're resonating today. And is this where you want to be resonating? I write this down every single morning. I write down my intention every single morning. And if it's not where you want to be resonating, let's look at ways where we can shift so you are where you want to be resonating. Whether it's up or down. Maybe you need to be mad at somebody. I don't know. And so while you're doing that, it shouldn't take you too long to do that. Let me just take a quick drink. So I asked you guys a question earlier, and I'm going to ask it again. Who are we really? Who is Casey? So I asked this question earlier, and when I answered it, I gave you my name. I gave you a list of titles, and I gave you some certifications. But is that who I really am? Nope. Thank you. Whoever said no, high five. You win. That's not who I really am. But let me tell you who I thought I really was. I was this redheaded, freckle-faced, awkward little girl. As you can imagine, I was rather bullied growing up. And because of that, I began to make myself very small. This little girl came with me into adulthood. She's still there to some degree. And because of that, a lot of my decisions that I did make, were based on what people were going to think about me. Yeah? And so I started doing things to make sure that I could control the way people thought about me, control their perceptions. Does anybody do that? Yeah, I am not the only one in the room that does that, please. Thank you for your honesty, sir. It's exhausting. It's like playing chess 24/7, trying to control everybody's perceptions of you. If somebody told me I was a bad mom, I believed them. And this goes back to when we were setting our intention. Remember that executive assistant? I just told my executive assistant I'm a bad mom. Now that, I'm not going to say the word that first came to mind. Now, my executive assistant happens to be a girl, is trying to show me all the ways that I'm a bad mom, right? Because my lens is so small. That's what happens. That's another way to think about that chart is lenses. And now I'm only seeing opportunities that prove that I'm a bad mom. I'm not seeing all the opportunities that prove that I'm a good mom. So I want to introduce you to a new concept. True, little t, versus truth, big T. Okay? Oh, let's go back here real quick, because this is important. So these are my little sisters up here. And I didn't put this picture up here just because they're really cute, but they were. Now they're just big brats. I put this picture up because I want you to notice something. Redhead, brunette, and blonde. We were referred to as the ice cream parlor growing up. Yeah, it's cute, it's funny. Here's where it's not funny. People would come up to us all the time and say, "Who's your daddy, the milkman?" And they would say it, and they would smile, and they would laugh. But imagine saying that to a child. And I'm not saying don't do that, but I'm just saying these are some of the limiting beliefs that we carry forward. It took me a long time to realize that that was a limiting belief for me. That people doubted who my mom and dad were. That's big. So, true versus truth. So I want to tell you another story. I like to tell stories. Well, before I do, so does anybody know when we look at somebody or anything, how much we actually see? What percentage? I think it's actually 30%. I think it's actually 30. We're going to go with mine, 30%. So when we look at something, we see 30%, okay? Which means our brain has to fill in the other 70%. Okay, so as you're looking at me right now, you see 30%, you make up the other 70%, right? And then you're looking at me, and you see 30%, and you make up the other 70%. What the heck do I really look like? Because you both have a different perception of reality, a different perception of what I look like, okay? We do the same thing with our minds. Whenever we have a story, if we don't have all the information, and rarely do we have all the information, our mind works to fill in the gaps. It cannot stand to have gaps in the story. So now we'll get to my story. And this is going to tie back into true versus truth. When, a long time ago, when I'd started on a sales team, I ended up getting into an altercation. Yeah. An altercation with one of the top billers. And it was ugly. It was public because we were in the bullpen. And for those of you who aren't in sales, that means we're in Cubesville. And as soon as we started fighting, all the little guys started popping their heads around the cube, right? And it was very ugly. And so finally we just went to our corners. We did not come to an agreement. And then the next thing I know, my coworker goes into the manager's office and shuts the door. Okay? I have no idea what's going on behind that door, but my brain wants to fill in the gaps. And so I start filling in the gaps. Oh my God, he just went in there. We just had a big fight. He's the top biller. He's in there telling him and spinning it, making me the villain, telling him how horrible I am, how right he is when I was right. And then I need to get a box. I'm getting fired. And I did. I went and got a box. And for the next hour, I sat there and I fumed and I worried and I stressed out. And I was like, oh my God, where am I going to go work now that I'm fired? And so finally, the door opened. Worst moment ever. Because I knew the moment was here when I was getting fired. And they came out and they were laughing. And I was like, great, they're laughing about firing me. This is horrible. And they walked over. My coworker went back to his desk. My boss came over, patted me on the back. And he told me a joke. And I went, what? And to this day, I don't remember what that joke was because it was such an excruciating moment. But do you see what I did there? For an hour, I stressed myself out. I had cortisol and adrenaline going through the roof. And there was no reason to do that. There was no reason. Because what I thought was truth wasn't even true. I had no idea what was going on behind that door, but my mind made stuff up. And so what I want to say here is that when you worry about the future, and this is not new to me, guys. It's been said a lot of times, but when you worry about the future, you rob the present of happiness. So don't worry about the future. And you can't change the past, so don't worry about the past either. Okay? Oh my goodness, let me take a little breath here. See where we are. One other thing I want to say about this is when it comes to true versus truth, truth is universal. True is an assumption of the truth. Truth does not rely on beliefs or consensus because those change, right? Where true does. So I want you to think about that going forward. And I've got a little quote for you here. And again, I want to ask you, who are we really? Okay, when it comes to true versus truth. So in terms of your consciousness, truth is who you really are. True is who you think you are. Okay? I may think that I'm that redheaded, awkward little girl, but truth is, I'm not her anymore. Okay? So I want to give you a visual of what we're talking about today. Tending your inner landscape. Can everybody see this picture? I know it's kind of far away, but anyway, I think this is a garden. I'm not quite sure because it's really overgrown. And for me, I don't think I would walk into this garden for several reasons. Number one, I'm afraid I might step on some kind of garden tool and hit myself in the head like a cartoon. I really don't think I want to pick anything out of here because I don't know that it's been fertilized correctly. But also, I'm afraid if I walk through there, it might bite me. And I won't even see it coming, right? So I'm going to go sit out here to find my peace. However, this garden looks much more well-maintained. Somebody's done some inner work here. Somebody's tended to this. You may still get bit, but odds are you're going to see it coming this time because you have taken care of what's going on inside of you. So I want to give you some tools very quickly to deal with to kind of set you on the right path. This is very, very high level, guys. This doesn't happen overnight, nor does it happen in 45 minutes, okay? But let's talk about GALE. This is an acronym. This stands for Gremlin, Assumptions, Interpretations, and Limitations. And let's go through each of these very quickly. So limiting beliefs, we're going to start with those. This is something you learned early in life that you ended up choosing to believe. So if you have a limiting belief that comes up, like, I'm ugly, or whatever, I want you to ask yourself the question, how true is this really? Okay? How true? Where did I learn this? And I think when you ask yourself those questions and start doing that deep inner work, you're going to find that those limiting beliefs are not real. Interpretations. These are stories or judgments that we tell ourselves about any given situation. For example, I interpreted what was happening behind that closed door very incorrectly. Okay? I could have saved myself a lot of time if I hadn't jumped to an interpretation of that situation. I need somebody to help me with my slides, man. Assumptions. Now, these are like interpretations all grown up, okay? Because assumptions are something that's actually happened to us, but now we assume because it happened to us, it can only happen that same way again. I'm going to give you a very personal example of this because I do believe in vulnerability. Hello, Brene Brown? Yeah, Brene Brown. I was married for 19 years. I went through a very messy divorce, and I have not seen or heard from my ex-husband in about 12 years. I have no idea where he's at. Now, I will not get married again because I don't want to have another failed marriage. Does everybody see where the assumption is there? Yeah. Why am I going to have another failed marriage? It could be completely different, especially if I met the man of my dreams. And if I go with this assumption, which I do, that's the true story, then I'm possibly robbing myself of joy in the future. That's where assumptions can limit us. But the big daddy of them all is the gremlin. This is the little guy or gal that sits on our shoulders and says, wait a minute, don't do that. They're going to make fun of you. You're going to get hurt. Don't do that. You've got to stay small. Go stay in that corner. Okay? And when we listen to our gremlin, I'll give you another example. So I host our company podcast, and I had this gremlin. Don't do it. People are going to listen to you, and then they're going to criticize. They're going to make fun of you. They're going to think you're stupid. Or worse, nobody's going to listen. That would be worse, right? If I'd have listened to my gremlin, I wouldn't be to almost episode 200 on our podcast. So that's how your gremlin can hold you back. Would you guys like to meet my gremlin? Yeah? Let's have a round of applause for Telly, please. She's been so good this whole time. My little creepy doll, according to one of my friends. Okay, let me get a drink, then I'm going to tell you about Tilly. 1 second. It's hard work up here talking, guys. All right, so let's talk about Tilly. Tilly was a project that I did during coaching school. We had to do a visual representation of our gremlin, and I'm going to have to hurry through this, guys. We had to do a visual representation of our gremlin, and this is what mine manifested as. My Raggedy Ann didn't come with freckles. I had to draw them on her. I took a red Sharpie, put them on her face, on her hands. Now she looks like she has the measles. I felt bad. As I progressed through coaching school, she had, there were more limiting beliefs that came up that I needed to deal with, so I ordered a button making kit. And I started adding buttons to this. And again, being very vulnerable, I'm going to read some of these to you, okay? So these are some of my limiting beliefs I had to deal with. Insecure. Ugly. Fearful. But here's the one that bubbled up that really, really shocked me. Undeserving. Why am I undeserving? And I'm not going to go through all the inner work that I did on that, but that was something that really shocked me. Why am I undeserving? Why are any of us undeserving? So I would encourage you, and so at the end, we had to do this last activity with our gremlin, so here's what it looked like. Telly, thank you for protecting me. I know you were just there to keep me from getting hurt, but by doing that, you kept me small. I no longer need you to protect me, but I appreciate what you've done for me so far. I love you. And then we hugged our gremlin.
I love you. I love you.
Guys, when I got her, I did not know she was going to say that back to me. I had no idea that was in there. To say that moment was cathartic is an understatement. And did my gremlin go away that day? No. Is she still there? She is, but you know what? She sits on my desk every day and I face her. I face my gremlin every single day, and we do it with love. We love each other. So very quickly, I want to tell you about, you know what, I'm going to skip. Atelophobia is the fear of being, of imperfection and not being good enough. That's where her name came from. Next. Okay, I want to talk to you about the reticular activation system very quickly, because this is what guides our executive assistant that we've been talking about all this time, okay? This is the definition. Your built-in autopilot, a bundle of nerves located in your brainstem to mediate behavior, regulate consciousness, and motivation. Here's Casey's definition. It's a gabagoo in the back of your head that tells you what to focus on, because we are bombarded with over 11 million pieces of information every second. Our brain can only take in 400 to 500 bits. How do we regulate that? That's how we regulate it. How does our reticular activation system know what to look at? Here's the beautiful thing. You tell it. You tell it what you want to look at, and then it goes and finds it. So if you tell it, I am a victim, okay, let's go find your victimhood. But if you tell it, I am abundant, and I know a lot of y'all are probably thinking of the law of manifestation, but this is the science behind the law of manifestation, is because you train your brain what you want to see. I train my brain every single day to look for opportunities that will serve me for whatever it is I'm trying to accomplish that day. So I want to leave you with the final quote, because I think I'm just about out of time. Who are we really? Go. This is an important question because we do not see the world as it is. We see it as we are. So I want us to focus on discovering that natural inner peace and joy rather than focusing on the external circumstances. When you do that, and when you tend to that inner landscape and get it in order, I promise you will find joy and success. My name is Casey Hasten. I'm here if you have any questions afterwards. Here's my contact information. Also, I want to tell you, if you go to my website, you can go to caseyhasten.com and sign up for the newsletter. I have a free resource that I am putting together that I'm going to give to you that's going to help you with your daily routines. So please scan that information and let me know how I can support you.
I want to introduce you guys to Walt Glass. Now, this is why I am a recruiter. I've been recruiting longer than I want to tell you because I've probably been recruiting longer than some of you guys been living. There's one right there. But you know what? Walt tells things, guys. He kind of gets into the weeds, and he tells things that we need to know and we need to project, and we need to talk about these things in a job search. And Walt, if you come and join me up here, I'll look a lot better. See that good-looking gentleman right there? He's got that serious look on his face because he's serious about what he's about to tell you guys.
Oh, I got a smile.
And you will understand. Are you mic'd up?
I think I am.
Oh, good, okay. I'll step away from him because I was hearing feedback. Oh my goodness. So that's Walt Glass, and we're going to talk about interviewing, guys. Listen to what Walt's got to tell you. Walt's my number one person that I share in 35 states across the United States on listening to about interviewing. Okay, I'm shutting up now.
Well, finally, the last speaker. How long do you have to keep these? I got a drawer full of them. It says, keep this coupon. Oh, well, maybe they'll draw my name next year. Well, good afternoon, everyone. And so let me ask you this. Has anyone here left a job because it just wasn't a good place to work? Who's had that? Who of you who just raised your hand would be willing to share in about 45 seconds the story about that? Okay, do we have another microphone we can use? Or just yell?
Hi everybody, my name is Baruch Vogel. Come on, first I didn't like that.
Baruch, you can borrow this one.
I have one.
Yeah, you do.
Hi everybody, my name is Baruch Vogel. I actually had to leave a position because it wasn't suitable for me, in that they were not only looking for something very specific which I wasn't able to provide as far as knowledge base, but also because they wanted a 70-hour work week with 30 hours unpaid overtime. And to me that was probably not acceptable in the position that I was in life and for what that position was going to get to me.
Okay, anyone else?
Hi, I'm Sabrina, and I left the job because there was no room for growth.
Okay.
They just talked about it, but they didn't show it.
Yeah.
Especially if you put effort in a company.
I understand. And you had that kind of experience? You got into the job and guess what? So my question is why don't we find out these things before we get the job? And how do you find out? Well, they said there was room for growth, but there wasn't, right? So Fred died, and he went up to the pearly gates, and St. Peter said, well, we got a new plan. It says, you get to choose heaven or hell, and you get to visit each. And so he looked at heaven, and it was praising, singing, not too bad. So he went down to hell. They were partying, they were having a great time, they were singing and they were dancing, and oh, it was just a wonderful time. And he says, you know, I think I'll take hell. So he goes down to hell, and it is fire and brimstone. He says, what is this? Oh, you just saw the demo. Well, what are we going to talk about today? And I want to tell you this story because I was looking online for some stories about culture. I worked for a tech company that loved to brag about how laid back and hip it was. We had the standard industry perks like snacks, drinks, and pool table in the kitchen. The CEO, convinced that employees were wasting time enjoying these benefits, installed a hidden camera in the kitchen, began sending out company-wide emails calling out individual employees for consuming more than their fair share of snacks and drinks and spending too much time at the pool table. What kind of culture is that, right? And culture is such a big word. So let's talk about some things and kind of to get a perspective of this particular topic today. How many chapters are there in the job search book? All right? When in your job search do you stop adding things to your to-do list that you need to do in order to get a job? I mean, the list just keeps growing and growing and growing, all these kind of things. Well, which ones are the most important to do? How do you prioritize those activities? How do you put them in order? What's the important thing you want to pay attention to in that? So we're going to talk a little bit about that today, but give me some more background. So what are companies buying? And I contend three things. And I developed these when I lost a job after working for 25 years with a little company called EDS back then. Had about 3,000 employees, and when I left 25 years later, they had like 120,000 employees. Growth wasn't a big problem for many years. It was like, if your manager calls, be sure and get their name, because we reorganized all the time. But anyway, it's these three things. It's like, what are our soft skills and characteristics? Casey asked a question, said, who am I? A lot of people say, well, I'm a project manager. No, that's what you do. That's not who you are. It's what you do. Your personality, that sort of thing. Your experience and your hard skills. So we certainly have to have some experience and hard skills to get into that job. Yeah, you can do the job. And then solutions to their problems and needs. And in interviews, I see most people do not sell the value they bring in an interview. Well, we're not going to talk about all those things today. I'm just kind of setting the picture. We're going to talk about something a little different. So who we are, what we do, and how we help. So I developed that back in 2000 because I took an early retirement. And when was it? Well, it was Christmas. 1999. All right, so it's been a while. And I screwed up an interview. And so that's what gave me this thing of saying, I don't want to mess up interviews. So I've done a lot of work by interviewing. So which is the most important of those three things? The I am, the I do, or the I help? All right, everybody for I am. Everybody for I do. Everybody for I help. Everybody who's waiting on everybody else to raise their hand. All right. Who we are and how we work can override the other two. And why do I say that? You can do the job. You can provide the value. But the way they work there doesn't match. I inherited an employee, and technically speaking, he was the master. He was the guru. Fantastic person. But don't let him talk to anybody. Because if he opened his mouth, then it all went downhill, from there. And so I was looking for a room that we could feed him, had a bathroom and a shower, and we could just don't let him have a phone or connect or contact anybody. But if these don't fit the values and the culture of a company, it's not going to work. It's not going to work. So the ideal position is what? So, well, we'd like to match four things. These are the four that I came up with. The job, got to be the right job. I got to like doing what I do. The company itself with the organization, which is a huge amount of things inside of that, but it includes the culture and the values of that company, the co-workers, the team that you work with, and of course your manager. Are there any of you that left a company because of management? I didn't say leadership, I said management. Because there isn't the leadership, right? And something happens. So I was talking with one of the candidates. I do an interview success workshop to help people learn how to sell these things. And she said, well, I asked the question to the person, well, tell me, what do you think are some of the most important reasons? Why did you come to work here? And that interviewer pointed a finger at her and said, listen, it's all about you. It's not about me. Do you know enough not to work there? That's your hiring manager, telling you. Pretty big signal right there. It says, well, guess what? That's not the kind of place I want to work. All right. Let's talk about definitions briefly. So what are values and what is culture? Well, values are what I call the basic beliefs and the philosophies. This is kind of the rules about how we're going to work. So it's kind of setting up those environments. And the culture includes the values and the attitudes and all that. So basically that's kind of the way the company runs and how it does itself, how it does business. So today, we're going to see if we got a match with a company that is who we are, how we work. Does that match? And the reason I picked this is because of all the things that are so important that we do in the job search. If you do all this preparation, all this research, all this networking, you get into the interview and you don't know something about the culture and you find out that it's not a match all that time, it's just been experienced, maybe you've learned something from it, but it's not a very productive time. So my question to you is, when you do the research on a company, are you paying attention to the values and the culture? So we're just going to focus on that little piece. 50% of CEOs and CFOs says that the culture really influences a huge amount of work. Only 50%? Isn't that an interesting statistic? Well, where are the other 50%? Don't you think that the culture is probably one of the driving things? I mean, if you don't enjoy working there, you're not going to stay. 85 or 88% believe that the company culture is, and so the employees believe it more than the executives do in this particular survey. Do you believe that the culture fit for you is a primary consideration for working there? Now, some of you I'm going to ask some questions to, and there's two kinds of people out here when I ask questions. There are those who would like to participate and answer, and there are those who are waiting for somebody else to participate and answer. Right? I'd like you to be one of those that would like to, let me jump in there and participate a little bit. What's the importance? Well, here's a whole bunch of bullets. I'm not going to read them all to you, but you can see that there's a significant impact to the business. It permeates every area. The people, the customers, the vendors, the organization, all throughout. Now, there's the posted values. This is what we see on the website, right? There's the wannabe values, and I remember when Ross Perot founded EDS, the story goes he was on the beach in Hawaii, poor guy. He had met his sales quota with IBM by January the 15th of the year, and they said, why don't you take some time off? Can you imagine that? So he wants to form his own company because he has this idea of outsourcing information technology. And IBM didn't want to do that. But he designed, and he came up, we all have the yellow pad story of where he'd written down, here are the values, here are the policies. This is the thing that's going to drive and how we're going to run and how we're going to operate before he ever started the company. Then there's the actual way that things work. And that's what we're going to focus on today. We want to find out the actual way it works. And I can read the stuff on the website, but I have to verify because it may be the posted days. Yes, we have growth in the company, right? You got growth opportunities. And there turns out that there weren't any. So there's a lot of things you can describe. What is corporate culture? A lot of ways to describe it. Some say it's just the way we work here. What you say about people when they're, not present, how you describe them, and what does it really look like. So we want to look at the focus on those particular things in a company that define that culture and the values. So what's wrong with these statistics? I need some thinking. I'm going to allow you some time to think. This is a new business term, allowing time to think. In your job, do you ever have time to stop and think? It's pretty hard, isn't it? It's very, very difficult because we're so busy doing it. I mean, my boss came up to me one day and said, what are you doing? And I said, well, I'm thinking. He said, well, get busy. I said, yeah, I am busy. I am thinking about the approach. And, I was in a job where I was part of a group that was responding to RFPs for deals over $1 billion, large international things, And I was thinking about, we're not doing very successful. And I was trying to think about what we might do about that. So I thought it was pretty important. All right, so what's wrong with this one? All right, how many think it's an appropriate number? How many think it's too high? How many think it's too low? It's too low, right? Why don't we want a job that aligns with our interests? Why are only 38% of us worried about that? The pressure to get a job is intense. It's huge. And you have an offer in front of you, but it's not really, you can do it. I always call it, well, I can do that job. And that immediately tells me if you don't have the growth opportunity or the learning opportunity or the ability to apply what you know so that you can get to do what you really like, that sort of thing, this probably isn't the job. So that's kind of low. How about this one? 40% of active job seekers say that company culture are their driving reason for looking for work. 47%. What's wrong with that number? Anything? Too high. All right. Why aren't more people citing that? Shouldn't it be 100%? Shouldn't we all be looking at that? All right. 35% say they would pass on a perfect job if the culture wasn't a good fit. I hear some lows out there. I don't hear massive rumblings, but I do hear a couple of little secrets out there. Too low, right? Should be more. 15% of job seekers turn down a job offer because of the company culture. What's wrong with that statistic? Now, why would I say that's too high? I'm going to tell you, we should have known that a lot sooner than the job offer. We shouldn't be waiting till the job offer to determine if that. We need to determine that a lot sooner in our plan. So I mentioned earlier when I started talking about the fact that, well, what do we need to do? How do we need to do it with the priority, the first things we need to do? So before we even do an interview with a company, we ought to research culture, and you can do that a multitude of ways, of course. That train whistle is my daughter texting me. I need to stop because we communicate so little. It would be good for me to talk to her. All right. What happens if there isn't a fit? Some of you talked about what did you do when that culture didn't work. We leave. And we're going to leave one of two ways. It's our choice or their choice. And some of us will go to work hard, try to do it, and do the best we can, but it's not going to be very productive because we just don't have the energy that comes from our work and our teammates and our company and our culture. The test is Monday morning. Are you looking forward to going to work? Or are you waiting until Friday? How excited are you on the way to work? Now, I used to get up, I'm an early person, so I get up and work started at 8:30. I was at work at 7 o'clock because I needed some time to do my own thing before everybody else came in and took everything off of my to-do list and maybe do something else. Right? So here's a whole bunch of things, but basically, it's just not a work, and it's too much. It causes too much stress, too much difficulty. Heart attacks. Well, who are you? We asked that question early this morning. So the actual thing we need to do, I think, first is to figure out us. I always thought that step one of the job search is really knowing ourselves. And I found out that I wrote down and said, here's how I describe myself. And then I asked, how come he's not listening?
Sleeping.
Oh, it's really boring. What do other people say about you? And this is one thing, this is a little small thing in the interviewing session I have is when somebody says, what are your strengths? They say, well, I am this, this, and this. Another phrase is, people tell me that I am this, this, and this. And so there's a very small differentiator, and I work on differentiation interviews, that says, what other people say about me has more impact than what I say about me. So if I were to ask people to describe Foster, he would get some different answers. You're not allowed to ask significant others these questions. Those don't count. Okay? The reality is, the truth is, all right? But here's some areas, here's a dozen areas that we could look at and say, what about me? How do I fit in this? How would I describe that and define that? Well, you can always go out there and look at strengths. And on a job description, one of the most popular things you see is must have strong interpersonal skills. Oh, okay. Well, here's 148 of them, or whatever the number is. And so I kind of took this list. And by the way, there's a handout that's going to go with this. You should email and contact John Luce for that handout. You raise your hand.
He's out in the lobby.
I know, but I know he's out. Okay, that's not loose as a loose cannon. Oh well, you know John Luce. So, because there's going to be a lot more things in the handout than I'm going to cover today. I'm going to show you some things that are in there, but I'm not going to go over them. But one of these is, now here's a list, and it's all kind of ways you can find out about yourself. But in there, as you look and analyze and look at yourself, and I went through this list, and there's 100 and so many. I said, which ones describe me? I found 80. I said, well, now, wait a minute. You're not all of those things. I said, well, I like to think I am, but maybe I'm not actually. So I need to ask other people a little bit more and see how. We have different personalities, I think. We have our home personality. We have our work personality. We have our church personality. And then we have our driving personality. You are grounded and based if all four are the same. Right? I finally stopped getting upset at other drivers because all I did was end up upset and they didn't care and didn't know. So I was the loser. So I said, well, let me stop doing that. Well, strengths and values help determine the culture, what we are strong in. So if I'm an analytical person and I like doing data analysis and that sort of thing, then I like to work for a company that values the data that we get and the ability to interpret that. And that's very important to them. So I'm looking. So I know this. I went to the company and I said, look, we're bidding on these large jobs, these RFP responses. They cost about somewhere between $2 and $3 million just to respond. 50 people working on the response. Huge, yes.
Sorry to interrupt, Walt. The handout, there is a piece of paper on your tables with a QR code on it. That is the handout. So if you guys want to scan that, you'll have that.
That's not the handout. That is a handout. The handout is the one that has all this stuff on it. All right. Thank you for that. And I'll mention how to sign up for the workshop at the end. All right. Therefore, what are our strengths? Because those strengths, as I'm able to do these types of things, the question is, are they of value? And is that the way that the company also works with that? Anybody taking any of these assessments? I've been assessed to death, right? All right. And I look at them. Here's an interesting one. This comes out because of, it's a selling style, social style survey, and it comes out into understanding how other people are and then how you can communicate effectively with them. And so it's a nice social style, isn't it? The driving people are those that, I just want to know the bottom line. Give me just give me this. I don't want to go all day. Analytical people want to know every step that, that you went through in order to get there. And the expressive, well, they're the jolly ones. They're the ones that's always happy. Their cubes are just like, all lit up with stuff and got pictures and all that stuff. They're the cruise director. They're the party person, all right? And the amiable are I'm not going to buy anything until I get to know you. Okay? And so it's a trust thing. I remember talking to one of the, I was trying to practice this after learning this thing, and I said, how was lunch today? And it took him about a minute and a half to answer. as he described his lunch. He said, well, how was lunch today with you? I said, it was okay. So there's the driving personality talking to the amiable personality. Right? All right. No, anyway, there's lots of different ways you can do that. So let's determine ours first. Now, a lot of people are taking Clifton's strengths as a current assessment tool about themselves. And I want to warn you that a lot of the things on the Clifton strengths, the words are not readily interpreted as to what they really mean. Okay? If you use that, be sure that you use the words to describe that particular title more than just the title. When I say, oh, I'm an input, everybody know what an input is? Okay? Well, it sounds like you're more of an output. I can't stop you from talking. So what's an input? All that. And so, here's mine. But of all the assessments I've ever taken, none of them shows that I'm a practical person. I am a practical person, and I'm driven by practicality. I will spend a significant amount of money on a garage door opener because I use it every day. Very functional, works, and I use it constantly, okay? I left it up to my wife to figure out what picture we were going to put on the walls. I didn't even remember what they were. We were over visiting some friends. We were eating dinner. I said, look, honey, they got a picture just like ours. She said, it is ours. We gave it to them. I thought I was doing pretty good at recognizing a picture, right? All right. So let's take some common strengths, for example, and I'm trying to help you figure out how to determine what you are, and then we're going to figure out and determine what do they do. So that's kind of where we're going with this. So we got some common strengths. So here's 10 of them. And I did a lot of research on them when I was looking up things. And I'm going to have in the handout, there are some links to some pages where some of this data was gathered and selected, and I chose and did some picking and choosing where some of this information is. And it's pretty interesting because for all of those, I said, here's 5 other strengths that are kind of like co-strengths that go with that particular one. So this might be of value to you to take a look at in the handout and say, okay, if I am time management, one of the things I probably need to have, and then you look at these other things, and I thought, the planning, the goal setting, organization, and stress management. What an interesting strength to come up with time management, because if you're always trying to fit things in. All right, so that's in the handout, and there's a whole bunch of them, and I'm not going to go through all of those, but you might take a look at those and say, all right, here's some things that might help me determine what that might be. And then there's some soft skills by career path. So I did some research on, all right, I'm a project manager. What kind of soft skills would be appropriate for a project manager? Well, what's the first soft skill that you would think of a project manager that they would need to have? Communication? Organized? Patience? That's every job. No, that's everything. How about detail-oriented? All right? There's some pretty much obvious. So you can think of some of this on your own. You don't need to go find a list to help you make some of these decisions. There are A's that might be able to help you. I sometimes think that job search is where we want to drive up to the window and say, I'll take 1 resume, 2 bios, 14 job leads, 5 target companies, and 6 scheduled informational interviews. I'm going to tell you what my hardest thing I think is to do in job search. People mentioned what their most difficult challenge was. My definition of the most difficult challenge is the self-discipline to do the work. I don't know about you, but if I really don't enjoy doing something, the trash needs emptying. I ain't going to do that. And I will find other little activities to do. And so, it's so much easier for me to sit here in my PJs and get online and apply for jobs. Now I'm active, I'm looking, I'm doing something. It's easy to do. So, okay, 2% return on that. So you've probably all heard how the little return on it. Now you want to do some of it, right? But on nights and weekends and not during peak time when you can talk to other people. So I looked at those, and it was a nice little table that came up. And I don't expect you to read any of this because I just say this is in the handout to say, all right, if this is my career path, here are the kind of skills that the surveys are telling would be appropriate for that. And what I would like you to do is say, well, what is your career path? And what would be, Ashik, it's good to see you. Good to see, what those kind of skills that people would generally be looking for. And are they a match? Yep, that's me. So let's take it, one of them down here. Oh, let me go back. No, I'll skip that. So I went out and was looking at company cultures, and there's a nice, I did some research on each company and said, well, what kind of culture do they have? And you can find the posted culture on the website through Google, and all those sort of things. And so I said, well, here's something. So I have actually a link that goes, and it'll let you look at the culture for all of these different companies. So if any of those companies happen to be on your target list, this might be of a benefit for you. So I want to look at Google. Can y'all read that? I want you to look at the words they use as well as the culture in that company. And I think women are like this because it's indirect. Men are more direct. This is the wrong thing to say. You can't say that. But men, me, I just say what I'm thinking. My wife, God rest her soul, would tell me what I'm thinking. I said, no, that's not what yes, it is. Honey, we're spending too much money. No, we're not. You're not making enough. That's a true story. Well, I don't know. All right, but you can be serious without a suit. Isn't that an interesting way of describing the culture? All right? Now let's look at the words of Zappos. Now, for those of you that know Zappos, that's a shoe sales company. And look at how they describe themselves. The one that stands out to me is do more with less. Yep, I can remember that because when I was in a sales team, sales support and doing that sort of thing, we get together in January and congratulate ourselves for 4 hours on what we did last year, and then we spend 2.5 days on all the things we need to do next year. All right. So, yep, and each year it was always do more with less. I fear AI. I mean, we're going to reach this stage where I'll have my computer talk to your computer. We'll just let AI do all the work for us. And I fear what that's doing to us as a environment of people and talking with the people. No, I won't get too far into that. But anyway, so Harvard Business Review had a nice little survey, so I thought I'd pick it up and put it in here. And they found out that there's basically 8 different culture company types. So you look at this list and say, gee, which type would fit me? That's why I'm giving you the handout. So you can kind of look at that and say, okay, I'm looking for this type of company. And then they said there's 2 dimensions. And the way people interact, which is, are they independent or dependent? That's where they put in the job description, able to work independently and with a team. Right? You can do both. And instability, responding to change on stability to instability. How do they do that? So let's take the military. What kind of an organization is the military? Did I tell you to think? I'll tell you when to think. Right? Why do they do left face, right face, forward march, halt, to the rear march? So that when I give you a command, you'll do it. Because if they give you a command and say, take that hill, well, let's put a committee together and talk about it and see if that's what we really want to do. Anybody want to volunteer? Okay. All right, so the 2 dimensions. So, and they came up with a little chart that says, here's kind of where these cultures fit. And then they came out with how the various descriptions of that particular type and where it fits. And so you can look at this as a tool to say, all right, how does that match? How does that look? How does that appear? So I'm just giving you some ideas of how to find out for yourself what you are and what you like and where it might exist. All in the handout. I'll pick one of these. Let's take learning. Anybody like the culture of learning? All right? I hear a lot of people in an interview say, I'm a lifelong learner. I enjoy change. And I said, okay, how's your job search going? Oh, I thought you liked to learn and like change. Oh, you mean you like to learn and like change about the things you want to learn and want to change? All right? So what questions might we ask for learning? And so here's the employees are really united about curiosity. They're inventive, creative. There's innovation, and that those who value learning over other things that might be attained through work. And so Tesla is an example of that kind of company. All right, so you read that and you look at that, and you want to find out if there's a learning culture. What questions, and I need some help with this, what questions might you ask in an interview to determine a learning culture? Okay. The question would be, what education opportunities?
What education opportunities
do you have?
Certification.
Right. Okay.
Plus,
Yeah, what type of training? Wouldn't it be nice to say, can I see the list of the internal training that you give in the company? And then you look at what's being trained and you say, that's the focus. That's what they're looking for, or the need. And maybe you can help with that. All right? So, and that's the idea of vetting these things, is coming up with the questions. But first we got to know what we're looking for, and then we can start finding out what the questions. And I see a weakness in people's questions about asking about culture. I get the same couple of questions. What is it like to work here? That's not a bad question. That's a generic overall question, but sometimes we want to hone in on some particular areas that are of high interest to us to find that match, all right? So I came up with some. You may not be able to read all these, but that's what we want to do. So an example is, what additional education? You talked about that as a question, it might be. Any specific education that is train. What's the onboarding process? They might do some training to me when I come on board. You might have 2 weeks of acclimation and onboarding training. What is it? What do you do with that to find out? What are they telling us with those answers? This is what's important to us. This is what we want you to know and understand. This is how we operate. This is the culture. This is what we do. All right? So there's our culture signals and signs. So there's a couple of places. Most of the questions that I'm talking about asking are more appropriate for an informational interview than they are for a job interview. Now we want to ask questions in an interview. And culture questions are a part of the questions we ask in an interview. So we're talking about this little part that I think has one of the biggest significant impacts in job search, or these types of questions. If we don't understand that culture, and it ought to be part of the vetting process is, let me look at the culture first before I look at anything else in that particular company and do the research on that. Because if it doesn't fit, and if I find some people that work there and I'll start asking them some of these questions, because an informational interview, you'll have more than culture questions you want to ask, but you certainly want to find out about that. And they are going to give the working culture, not the posted or the wannabe culture. He said, I got this many minutes, and I just doubled it. All right. So popular company cultures of value. So I went through and did this, and I suggest you do the same thing. And I've got some things in. I'm not going to go through all of them, but I just picked out these. These are fairly popular strengths, skills that are necessary. Collaboration is pretty popular, teamwork's pretty popular, those kind of things. And collaboration and teamwork, I think they're two different things. Okay? I can collaborate with people. Red Auerbach defined teamwork and defined how he would value his basketball players. He says, I'm going to rate you on how well you make your other players better. Now that's teamwork. So when somebody says, well, I'm a team player, and then they add with that, so I look forward to having everyone succeed and making you, my manager, look good. Oh, I'm interested in that. And that's kind of a thing we might want to use if you're overqualified and you feel like they feel like you're a threat to them as a manager. There's a way you say, well, I'm not a threat to you. I'm here to help you look good. That's my focus, not on putting you down because you don't have the... I mean, I got to the point where I didn't have all the knowledge necessary, but I knew how to hire it, but I didn't do it. You get to some point where, what does a CEO do? There's only two things on a CEO's resume. Can fire people and can reorganize. Okay, that's all you need. That's mostly all they do. All right. So then I looked at, how do I look at this? How do I take one of those values and what do I do with it? I said, well, all right, first thing I want to do with it is, what is its definition? Can I describe it? Can I name it? Because I want to talk about that in an interview, and perhaps in an information interview, I'll talk about that, the value of it. And so we're going to have the definition, the value of the value. What good is collaboration? What does that do for the team, the company? How is it demonstrated? What does it look like? And then when I have that information, I can start developing questions to ask to determine. Because if I know what it looks like, then I can ask questions. Does it look like that here? And so I put these together. And so here's teamwork and collaboration. And here is the definition of it. Here's the value of it. Here's how it's demonstrated. And with that information, I came up with these questions that I could ask. And I have this little library of questions. Now, I did 10 of these. All right? So there's your McDonald's gift. I'm saying, hey, just give me 10 of these. And so you can go back and you can look. I'm not going to go through them. But these to tell you. And that's kind of the process I'd like us to, that I suggest that we use. Now, leadership is one of the biggest parts of culture, and one of the biggest reasons people leave is because of that. So I'll put a little more emphasis in that, and there's 4 different styles of leadership. Therefore, find out what the definition of your value. Know your value, find out what the definition is. Find out what is the value of it. I would love to talk about, that's some good information we can talk about. And what does it look like? And now what questions could I ask to deliver that? So I'm not going to go through the work-life balance because I'm being pushed for time as an example. So what are your top 3 strengths? If you don't know what they are, we need to find out what they are, right? Ask other people is included in that. Find out what their definition is, what the value is, describe what it looks like. So for yours, you can start building your entries in the table, or go however you want to do it. But I think you ought to answer those questions. That's my suggestion to you as to how we can get this done, right? And then you got a prioritized questions list that include the culture. See, it's only part of your questions list, just the culture piece. Which ones are the most important to you? Which ones can you use in an interview? Because you can't ask them all, it can't take too much time. And which ones are important for an informational interview? I suggest we never go into an informational interview unprepared. Can you tell me about the company? And that's about all we know to ask, right? When do you do that? Well, in the job interview, we have really limited time, more than we have an informational interview. So here's some information is, after your first response, there's you ask your first question. And guess what I suggest the first question be? A culture question. A culture question. What are the top 3 things for a candidate to be successful in this role? Okay? What kind of person? Who are you looking for? See, interview is selling. They're buying. What are we selling? Well, selling people go find out needs before they start selling. The automobile dealer says, do you want this truck? I said, what are you looking for? The department store says, how can I help you? So that's the question we want to ask. Who are you looking for? I want to ask, what is it that I can do for you? And so those are the top two, I think, important questions we want to ask, up front in an interview, because then I can sell to that and also find out, if it's a match for me. So here's in the hand, it's got the resource links. And here's your question about, should you practice an interview? And here's your decision tree. Now, the Dallas Pit Crew is, I'll tell you about mine. The Dallas Pit Crew is formal. It's a mock interview with a panel. And is Ron still here, or did he leave?
He's gone.
He must have taken Mark home.
He did.
Okay. Ron Layton, Mark McDonald founded the Pit Crew, and he is recovering from a health issue, and so Ron Layton. And there's a website also available. There are 13 series of programs. It couldn't be a 12-step program for interviewing. It had to be 13. That's a link. And if you're interested in that, you can send me an email. But look me up on LinkedIn. And my About section is about the Interview Success Workshop. And there's some QR codes on the thing that it starts out as an email to me. The philosophy is make it easy for people to do things. And so I found it a little bit easier. Instead of people having to remember this, they just hit the QR code and it starts an email and it sends it to me, right? And to take the workshop. And it's based on the fundamentals of selling. It's informal. We have fun. It's a learning interview. It's not a mock interview. And so about the workshop. And what do you say is the price you must pay for blowing the competition away? It's easy to see how excited you'll be when you learn. There's no cost. It's free. Thank you.